when I read her work, I felt like I don't want to change a punctuation mark in this. I want to honor the silences and the gaps. And so she doesn't need to be open and it's all there, but yet she's still willing to again, and it goes back to what I first sensed when I read it, that everything had been eked out of this material and put on the page. But then there's still the humility of we're bringing in other creatives. So what are you bringing to the table, and what spices are you adding to this?
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
David Gyasi is an actor. He plays Austin Dennison on the new Netflix series, The Diplomat. He sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character? Do you have a typical first step?
I'm just looking at this. So this little notebook is fantastic. I'll get the material and I'll read it. And then if it resonates with me, and if whatever the process is, how we ever get to the point where we agree that we're going to work together, myself and whoever's making it, I'd say the process actually begins before then, and it does start with this. So I'll read the script and then I'll have this, and I begin to jot down things that come to me. Sometimes images, sounds, sometimes feelings. I'm interested in I always talk about the silence, the gaps between the words. I'm interested in that. And that starts to give me an inkling as to who this person is, and why they say what they say, why they say in that rhythm or not, what creates a kind of tempo to them, an edginess to them. And I would say that's how I typically start. Just this is like this book is like an investigator's journal.
Yes,
do you know what I mean? And
yes.
I just start writing down any clues that I get as to who this person is and what this world is, and then it becomes a bit of a safety blanket now. But what I'm finding is, having used this process for a number of years, that I find I don't refer back to it as much as I used to, because it starts to seep into my into my body and into my psyche. So that would be where it starts, maybe with the journal.
Do you find at this point like there's almost this certain hesitation in this first period when you're jotting stuff down, where you don't want to make assumptions about this person yet? Do you find that when you start to do that, you start to, out of safety maybe, about how to safely play? I know this person. I can do this. And then you jump to the safety thing, but you haven't fully done your investigation yet. You don't have to grasp onto a way of playing this person yet. Do you think that that's important in this first little stage?
That's a really interesting question. Like, what is the first thing that you reach for or you grasp when trying to erect a character? And I find that instinctually, my mind and subconscious will be saying stuff as I'm reading. And so that's where the journal is helpful. But when I get in a rehearsal room or get on a set, I try and throw it all away and let it all be new. So I don't have a problem with making the choices and being bold with those choices. It's why I've struggled with the idea of an acting coach in the past, and I still don't have one. And I'm sure there will come a time where I find someone that I work with and where it becomes sort of in sync. But I find that period quite sacred, and I really cherish it. where I get to meet the character and the character me, and we build something and create something together. So I love taking that with me into if it's an audition, then it's my chance. It's maybe my one chance to go,
Right.
in my world, this is who this person looks like. But I feel like it would be, maybe arrogant is too judgmental, but it would stifle the creativity if I was to think now that's complete, because I've been in my room or in my study with just me and the script, and it might be entertaining here, but I'm sure that it's not as entertaining as when you bring in all the other elements. And I've grown to love and respect and welcome all the other elements. So I'll do all of that work and then try and throw it, and then be open to react to what else is coming in the room.
When you get a character that is a part of a series, what is this process like of like, if it's a small character in a film, there's a certain set period of time that this character is going to be alive. It's going to be probably a couple days. You could try different things. The director can give you notes, and it's on camera. They got it. They're happy. But when it's a character that is in a series, this series could go on for years. And this is somebody that is going to be living in this showrunner's mind for years, and they already have been, and they're thinking about things years ahead, maybe. Do you have to take on this burden as an actor of trying to figure out how I'm going to meet this showrunner's expectation of this character with mine? And when does that process take place? Do you feel like you have to do that before you even start filming? Is this something the actor should even be thinking about?
I think trust is the key there, and let me quantify that. So when I had just finished off of a long running show, and I'd said to my team, not interested in signing again for a contract where we don't know where the end point is. We don't even know where the middle is. We just know the start point. And I just felt like I was ready to have the arc of my character sort of laid out before we began filming. I was ready for maybe a one and done TV thing. Open to some theatre, very open to some theatre. And then my English agent said, I think you should read this. I really think you should read it. So I read it, and I just felt that there was just levels in the writing, levels of like nuance, intelligence, study and discipline. I could almost feel it being reworked and rehashed, and all of the juices, all of the beats and the smiles and the laughters and the sighs, all of that in those gaps in between the words. I could hear them like a symphony as I was reading it. And then I just felt like I need to explore this further. And so then when I went into the room and presented what I thought I was hearing, it seemed to really chime with the creators. And it was at a point where there were just different things on the table, because my availability was there. There were things that were ticking that, one and done box or the film box. But nothing was, nothing had kind of arrested my intrigue as much as this writing. So then after the kind of audition phase, Lucinda Syson, the casting director, kind of called me back in and said, I think you might benefit from a chat with Debora Cahn and her you. So then we sat and we spoke about who this character was, who he could be.
And did you have the role yet?
Didn't have the role yet. This was us kind of sizing each other up.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting about that interaction was a kind of openness to collaborate on who this person could be. And the things that really intrigued me about Austin Dennison were very similar to the things that intrigued Debora about Austin Dennison. And Debora threw in some new bits of information that, of course, I didn't know but loved. And I feel like I threw in bits of information from my life and my upbringing that Debora loved as well. And I felt that trust was kind of formed in that chat.
Yeah.
And then I remember coming away and saying to my team, this I could commit to, because I've got trust and respect for the people that are creating and writing this story. And also a little bit of fear in terms of the amount of dialogue. I felt like this was work that I would only be able to focus on this. I wouldn't be able to go away and do other bits and projects. And that, I loved the idea of that, and I'm loving the idea of that still. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, it's definitely something that I consider. I can't speak for all actors, but it's something that I consider. Could I do this? Because it might be a really good premise, but then where are we going? So in the first couple of episodes that they sent me, Dennison doesn't appear that much. So I had to have the discussion about what are we looking to do? What's his story? What are we looking to say and tell through this person? And there was enough there for me to feel like this. I could commit to this.
How rare is this for a showrunner or a director, if you're doing a movie, to recognize in you a kind of collaboration in that way with the character? It feels like Debora wanted to have this kind of collaboration to build this person. Is that rare?
In my experience, pretty rare. Quite often showrunners, quite rightly, garner so much respect for what they've achieved and what they've done in the past. And when you work with someone who's quite prolific, they know what works and they know how to put together characters and put together casts, and off you go. I find Debora to be incredibly humble and incredibly present and open. The magic is she doesn't need to be, because her work is so brilliant. Right. And when I read her work, I felt like that was the other thing that intrigued me about it. I felt like I don't want to change a punctuation mark in this. I want to honor that.
Yeah.
I want to honor the silences and the gaps. And so she doesn't need to be open and it's all there, but yet she's still willing to, again, and it goes back to what I first sensed when I read it, that everything had been eked out of this material and put on the page. But then there's still the humility of, we're bringing in other creatives. So what are you bringing to the table, and what spices are you adding to this? And that's what I felt, and I'd say that's pretty unique. I'm sure there's other people that work like that, but
it's almost sounds like maybe it's because, like you're saying, she doesn't need to be open, but maybe it's because maybe this stuff is good because she is open. That's the final step. She locks it. She's very precise on the page about the characters, but knows that the final ingredient is being open and letting the actors bring this to life. I mean, that might be what separates that from other people who are brilliant on the page. Then they're so locked in with actors, they stifle the actors', creativity. And then this stuff is, you're watching it, and I know this stuff, I turn it off. It just feels like it's written. It doesn't feel alive. It feels like good writing, where this doesn't. This feels alive.
It's great to hear. Her bass note is very high. So you know, there's not often much you have to do, and if something's not sticking, we're just genuinely, and that's very rare that that happens, but we're generally going, why? What am I missing here? And through a quick discussion, we'll often find it. And, you know, I remember one note, one chat that we had, which ended up being a note that she gave me, and I really love and respect Austin Dennison. I do. I find him quite an inspiring character. And she had to pull me back on that. She was like, remember, he's human. So
wow, that's
so
interesting.
this can,
Yeah,
he can be arrogant in this moment, or he can have this flaw. And that just opened a world of vulnerability to him, which was another layer, you know?
the political angle of Austin, like the idea of playing somebody enveloped in the, you know, the political world, is this an added extra layer that you have to like figure out how to navigate? I'm just trying to imagine what I would be worried about. I would be worried about, like, is there a way that everybody in politics carries themselves that I'm just, or in a room together that I just don't know about, and I need to know that, you know, because somebody's going to immediately know, oh, wow, that's not somebody in this world of international, you know, politics because they did blank. You know, that it would be something that would consume my head. You know, I would have to sit down with all of these people and just start talking to everybody and just being like, anybody that's even remotely like my character. That's what I would be doing. But what did you do to deal with that kind of thing?
Well, the politics element of it kind of had three pulls for me. And one of them was probably to do with that fear factor of the role and the size of this role, to speak all of that political speak and make it sound organic.
Yeah.
That scared me, but also fascinated me. And I then, so to deal with that, and I'm starting to do it now because we're filming some more episodes now. So I just began to envelop myself in news from all different angles, all different kind of political leanings, to try and understand and have that language just seep into my body and into my system, into my vocabulary. That was one level. Then the second one was that he is a black person of color in a right-wing government. And so I'd made an assumption from the examples that I had in sort of right-leaning government, the examples that I'd seen on TV or things that I'd heard them say. And by the way, people that had managed to hold positions of influence and power, real power and influence within that party, seemed to have gone to certain types of schools and seemed to perhaps have diversity if you were to look at a picture of the cabinet. But in terms of socioeconomic background and kind of policies that seem to look out for the different sections of our community, it seemed to me, when I kind of looked at them and then saw these policies coming through, they seemed at loggerheads. They seemed to be disjointed somewhat. So I had made an assumption of who I was thinking Dennison to be. And then I had a conversation with Debora about that. And she was saying how, you know, she has to believe and knows to be true that there are good Republicans and that there are bad Republicans, and there are good Democrats and there are bad Democrats. And so she was saying how, you know, some of the good Democrats, some of the good Republicans or whatever party you're in, if you're a good person within that party, if you feel that that party is starting to go off track in a potentially dangerous way, there are some good people who leave, who jump ship and leave, and just simply say, you know what, I need to be on the outside, shining a light on what's going on in there. But then there are some good people who decide to stay and try and steady that ship. And I found that fascinating because I felt like Dennison was in that camp. He was this person who didn't necessarily agree with everything that his party were doing or voting for, but felt like he needed to stay there to try and steer that. And so that was a pull for me. And then finally, just going back to the fact from that, and this is pretty much the conversation we were having when we were building this character, really. Obviously, Debora had conceived and come up with Dennison, who was fully formed. But as we were fleshing it out, the idea of me playing him and what that might bring to the table, we began to look into the type of school I went to, the type of parenting I had, the type of work that my parents had put in to try and create opportunities for me. And the fact that me as a person, that's, you know, seeing the work that they put in and seeing what they had to go through, you know, to arrive in a country that literally had signs saying no Irish, no dogs, no blacks, and have to go and find somewhere to live and find a job. From that to then your kids go to school and someone says something dodgy to your kids, and that sometimes could even be a teacher, to have to deal with that, to deal with the various kind of systemic oppressive things that can happen in one's life in growing up, to be someone who doesn't leave that at the door or negate that or ignore that, but to be someone who carries that with him when he walks into Parliament and sees a mural in the Foreign Development Commonwealth Office that depicts America as a glorious woman holding the scales of justice and Britain holding a flame, or the other way round, kind of glorious robes, and Australia in a kind of bush hat naked, and the whole continent of Africa as a small boy with fruit on his head. How do you navigate the constant reminder of history? How do you do that and hold your head up high and conduct yourself in a manner that can still elicit change? That was a space that, again, you know, I said I have a lot of admiration for Dennison because he does places that I don't know that I could or would have the self-control and the wherewithal to be able to recognize where the battles are that move the needle, and to have the foresight of what the war is and what that challenge is, you know. So yeah, politically there's that. And then, you know, to your question, I interviewed various different MPs. So I interviewed some that were Conservatives, I interviewed some that were from the Labour government, people of colour, and that helped me just to know what it's like when you cross that floor for the first time, and you know that you're, you know, one of 10 people that share the same skin tones. in 300 people in all of these years of history.
Right.
And then it's your turn to speak. How do you keep a semblance of your heart and your experience?
I'm getting the impression here from you, and then also from other things I've heard, other interviews you've done, that you don't just do anything that comes your way. You're a very discerning person in terms of the work you do. I mean, you told a story of you insisted on the script for Interstellar before you even agreed to do it.
Yeah. Some people to this day are like, I don't believe it. I don't believe you did that. Yeah.
But what do you think that's about? Is that about just knowing what is required of you to go 100% and not wanting to do that because of the effort it takes for something that's not worthy?
I think there's definitely an element of that. That's not the whole picture for me, but there is an element of that. There's two things that come to mind that I think play into where this comes from. One of them is sort of being brought up a Christian and then making my own decision to pursue that, to pursue a relationship with a greater being, with a power outside of myself. What's helpful about that is it's quite easy to take myself out of the equation and think there's other things going on and other things in play here. And then also to not look at the shiny things and be mesmerized by them, but know that sometimes the treasure's in the dirt, and sometimes the treasure's in the narrow pathway, not the wide pathway. So for me to commit to something and not know, I'm sort of pausing there because I feel like I knew when I read the script from the first moment. I feel like something went off within me and I didn't know all of the bits and bobs. But sometimes you'll get excited about something. You could just be getting excited about the shininess of something. And then when you scratch it a bit and you interrogate it, you think that's not enough to sustain me for the 3, 6, 7, however long commitment, 6, 7 months or whatever it is. That's not enough to sustain me. And I don't want to be that person who's pulling down, bringing down a negative energy around people or around set. So I think that's that. I think my faith has something to do with that. And then also, you probably would have read that I had my first child when I was 19, and what that did for me, probably more so than my wife. You'd have to ask her, but it removed the safety net for me, and suddenly I had to be. I just was like, if this is going to work, I'm going to go after it 100%, and I'm going to do things that I'm passionate about, because I felt like, one, I've got a family to support, and two, I want them to see what it looks like when someone pursues their passion. I think that's really important. Again, speak to my reps about it, but I'm sure that it can be quite difficult sometimes when they're like, what are you, why are we here again? And I'm like, yeah, that's not the one, guys. This is, yeah.
I love that. What works best for you on set in terms of how to get the best out of you? If there's time, do you like to do rehearsals?
I love rehearsals. I love it. And I always, a good friend of mine, fantastic actor actually, I'm going to name drop him, Cobner Holbrook Smith. You should get him on it. He's amazing. He always said to me when we were younger, we kind of grew up in the business together. He always said it's a re-HEARsal. It's a chance to re-hear things. And I love that. I love that because it's a reminder that we're not fixed yet. You know, we're not, and how, you know, if you are a theatre person, you know, you can be washing the dishes like 3 months after you've come off a long run. You've probably done the play over 100 times, And 3 months later, you're washing the dishes, and then you go, oh, that's what that bit meant. Oh my gosh, it's why plays go on for forever. And we can have Rory Kinnear's Hamlet, and we can have Paparazziadu's Hamlet, and we can have Mel Gibson's Hamlet. We can revisit these things. So I love it. I love a rehearsal. One that's kind of devoid of egos and whatnot. But if people are just coming and they're open, and we want to just we want to expunge as much as we can from the material, then I'm here for that. Having been in the business a while now, you develop ways of working without a rehearsal and turning up and doing it, and turning up on the first day and it's your big monologue, first scene of the whole thing, and turning up and quietly you're just growing into the character. I've sort of have different ways of doing it. My preferred would be something that's collaborative. I think because a big part of the reason I got into the business was that camaraderie, that sense of togetherness that I found in school plays. I just love that. So, yeah.
Is there anything you do when you're not working to kind of feed your inner actor so that you can use that food when you're working?
It's just seeing other art, man. That's what it is. We took my son to his first concert 2 days ago, and it was a concert that it was supposed to be for his 12th birthday present, but that was in the middle of the pandemic, so this concert got pushed back. And he's really he quite likes the Pentatonics, so they were in London, and took him to see them, and it's kind of amazing. You see how talented they are, but there was something quite amazing about seeing these artists perform Bohemian Rhapsody a cappella. And I just was even more aware. So again, it's rehearing, isn't it? I reheard that song, and I reheard it because the lads singing the lead vocals, it was deeper. It meant something that was connected to their own history as gay men. It meant something to be singing that. And the other song they sung was the Hallelujah song. And that line, I heard that it's a broken and it's a something hallelujah. I really heard that. I really heard the cry of humanity in that lyric. And so, yeah, if it's, going and seeing how someone's interpreted something and created a painting or whatever, it's seeing other art. For me, I would say that's the thing that really kind of gives me a kick up the backside to go and try and contribute to this space of storytelling and creating.
David Gyasi, thank you so much.
Peter Rinaldi, an absolute pleasure, man.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.